Welcome to Megasquirt Training Part 3. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at our software navigation. We're going to have a lot to learn, so let's get started. Okay, so let's jump into this video and talk about our software navigation we're going to be doing with our TunerStudio software. So in the previous video, we learned how to do some basic functionality with our software. In this video, I'm going to be walking you through all the other details and navigation areas of the software so you can get very familiar with it and know what to expect as you're doing your tuning process. So without further wait, let's jump into the video so we can check this out. Okay, so let's get started here. We're going to be taking a look at navigating and working with our TunerStudio software here so that we're a little bit more familiar and what to expect and how to go in and accomplish some things as we're starting to work with this software and get more comfortable with it. So the very first thing here is we can see that we have these gauges are going to be open in our dash display. Now these gauges are going to be showing us all kinds of important data here. We can see the engine speeds pulled up here on our one gauge, and we can see that we have our throttle position. If we go to actually move our throttle, we're going to be seeing that our throttle actually goes and it moves. We're hitting our throttle right now. We're going to be seeing that it moves as I'm putting my foot on the throttle. We're going to be seeing that we also have things that are important like coolant temperature and air-fuel ratio and our ignition timing. But we also see some things that may not be relevant right now or we don't want to see. We can see the EGT is one of the gauges here, and this is something that I don't even have wired into my Megasquirt, and it is up on this particular gauge, so I'm wasting a gauge space for looking at something that I am not going to be using. So we're able to reassign what's displayed on these gauges. If we simply go ahead and right-click here, we can add different things. So anything we can see here as we kind of go pan across what it says right here, you can see that we can select different values of things. We can see calculations or inputs. Normally I want to go ahead and look at inputs. So in this case, I might want to see something like a map sensor input. If I'm going to be working in speed density mode or relying on a map sensor for my fuel calculations and my spark calculations, I want to see what that's reading at all times. It's going to be really important. So we can see here, if I look under sensor input 1, if we go through the list, we can see engine map. Now it's going to be one thing we can kind of click on here, and we can see that now my map pressure is reported in my gauge here. So I'm able to tell if my map sensor is reading right when I'm at vacuum, or if I'm key on, engine off, or whatever the case may be, or if I'm boost. This is going to be showing me what my map sensor is reading. This is going to be a very important information that we always want to see. So what we have up on our dashboard here can change. We're able to have some flexibility here and select different things, but we need to be aware that we can go in and change these. They're not going to be hard set to that particular parameter that we see here. I'm going to be going over some very important things you always want to have in your dash coming up in some other videos, but I wanted to be aware as we're kind of getting comfortable with the software, they are able to navigate and edit these particular gauges here. If we look at the bottom of the screen, we can see all these little boxes, and right now we see this not RPM synced is in red, this box, and that's because I don't have my cam and crank sensor pattern selected, and the EMS is not seeing that pattern that it's expecting in this case. We're going to be going over that again in some future videos, but this is going to be one of the first things you see as you key on engine off. You're going to be seeing that this illuminates. Once you start to crank, you're going to be seeing that this is going to go and show it's green. It might go in and show that it's in a synced mode. We're also going to be seeing that we have all kinds of other things that it'll go in and it'll either have a warning status or it'll tell us what kind of condition it's operating in. For example here, if we're seeing that we're using an overboost function. So if we're turbocharge or supercharge example and we set a boost cut, so we don't want to go over a particular boost range where we have engine damage occurring, if we're going in hitting that boost cut, it will report it here showing this as overboost enabled. So it's going to be telling us statuses of what's going on. We're going to be very useful during our tuning. We can see another thing you're going to be coming up with very commonly seeing this illuminated here, this need burn. When we make changes as we're going and editing our file, we're going to be needing to update our controller. If we don't update our controller, it's not going to take those changes as permanent. And if we key off, we may lose those changes when we power back on the box. So it's very important that this burn function is done. It's going to tell us when that needs to be done. You're going to be seeing that this is illuminated here in red typically, telling us that we need to do a burn. So we're going to be finding here that we have these boxes at any point in time. We're going to be lighting up either green or red to warn us or tell us what is going on. It's going to be very useful during our tuning process. So as we start to go through this video, you're going to be noticing that you're going to be seeing these lit up, and we'll be talking about some more of these as we go on here. Next, we're going to be seeing, as we go up to the top here, we can go to File, and we're going to be able to go through our drop down here. We can see we can load a tune. We walked through that in the last video. We can save or the save as on a tune. We're able to go in, and we did that before in that last video, so we understand that process. We also see this work offline mode. Now right now we're in an online mode because we can see that all of our gauges on the screen are going to be illuminated, and when I move something like my throttle position, it's going to go in and actually move, or my map sensor here, let's just say my throttle position is a good one here. We can see that we're live. It's showing that real-time change as I moved my throttle position. Now, what's significant about this is we're able to edit in offline and online mode. Now, when we're online, we make our changes. It's going to be writing that to our controller. We're able to go into this work offline mode. If we click it, we can see now we're in offline. We're able to still make our changes, and then we can save those changes. When we get back online again, we're able to go in and use that file load tune feature that I showed you in the last video, so we can load the tune that we've made in the offline mode, the changes we made in the offline mode, we can load that back onto our controller. So that's going to be nice if we're not around our car, but we want to go ahead and maybe update our rev limiter. So we want to change our rev limiter, and we're not live with the car, so we want to go and do that. We change the rev limiter, we save that file as an update or a change, then we go to the car, we power it on, and when we go to this load tune, and we load that tune, and we put it onto the box, and then we'll have our updated rev limiter if we're kind of doing something just basic like that. So if we want to get out of this work offline mode and we're powered up to our box, and everything is going to essentially connect right away, we don't have to worry about the box not being powered or ignition key not being powered on, we would go back to this work offline mode. We can uncheck it, and it'll go right back, and now we're on online mode. So we're able to toggle between the offline and online mode. Now if you're doing your tuning, there's going to be no reason you're not in the online mode, but if you want to get into the offline mode for whatever reason that might be, you could simply go into File and then go ahead and select that. Under Options here, we're defining a whole bunch of things that we can do. We can select different languages, so if your primary language is not English, you can select all these different languages. Everything will be displaying in that language type. If you look here under our navigation, there's going to be some navigation options here. Under View, we're going to be seeing some different view options we have here. Some of these are going to be relating to some different software versions. Now this is the light version right now, the TunerStudio MS Lite. We are able to go and upgrade our software version. I'm going to be talking about that in an upcoming video so we can see what we need to do in order to get different software versions. There's going to be some benefits by having the registered and the ultra version of the software. We don't need them right now. If we're going to be doing our basic tuning and our basic setup, there's no reason to go in and upgrade from this MS Lite. I've successfully tuned many cars with this basic MS Lite software with absolutely no problems. So you don't have to feel like you need to go immediately grab that software. If we go back into options here, we're going to be seeing we have some preferences and some performance things. Most of this is not going to be relevant. We don't really have to worry about using any of these things under options. I think the biggest thing for me would be the language. If again, your primary language is another language, you would select that. Under data logging, this is where we're going to take an actual data log. So if we want to capture the data, right now we're looking at our live view. So we're, again, if we move something like our throttle position around, we're going to be seeing that it changes here in live. But what's going to happen is that is occurred right there, and we're not able to retrieve that. We're not able to go and look at that at a later point in time. In order to capture the data as our engine is running, whether we're doing a dyno pull or we're at the track or we're just driving in normal conditions, in order to capture that data and play it back for later evaluation so we can go into our tune and make changes, we have to use this data logging feature. So we can see if we hit start data logging, that's going to start our data log file, and then we can go stop, and that's going to allow us to stop our file so we can capture the log of the data for as long as we'd like, and then we can save that file. And then once we do that, we can open it up in a separate software here. We can see that Megalog Viewer is going to be what we actually look at our data logs in. We're not going to be looking at that right now. I just wanted to point out this data logging is there. We're going to have a separate video on data logging so you can explore that and get a little more comfortable with it. We can see up here under communications, we see that we have a lot of the things that related to our data rate or what kind of communications we're jumping into settings here. If we look, let it populate. You can see it puts us right into offline mode. This is going to be if we want to change our COM port, our baud rate, or if we want to go test our particular port we're on, or detect what kind of port we're on. If we're at this point, we're already online with it. We don't have to worry about that. I'm just going to click accept here, and it's going to go back and get us online again. If we jump back into communications, we can see that there's a couple other things that we can check under here, none of which at this point are going to be really important to know. If we jump under tools here, we're going to be seeing that we have some things we can do for an update or install firmware. So we talked about the firmware. That's going to be where we have certain features enabled that are going to populate into our software here. So if we have a new firmware that's out that releases a new software feature, let's just say it has some fancy rev limiter feature that comes out and they release it, you have to upgrade your firmware. In this case, you go to tools, do this firmware upgrade. We also see that we have our ability to calibrate our throttle position and some of our sensors here. We're going to go into that in a separate video. We're going to be looking at that process. We can see right now that my throttle position is not calibrated and my map sensor is not calibrated. It should be right now with my engine off, my key on. I should see my map sensor reading approximately 100 kPa or 0 psi, and my throttle position should be at 0%. We can see that that's off. And our coolant temperature here is off as well. We can see it's registering 131, and I'm in an ambient temperature right now of 60 to 70 degrees, so my coolant temperature should be displaying that as well. So that means all of these calibration scales for the most basic sensors we have wired in need to be calibrated. We're going to be doing that under tools. So let's jump out of this and go into our tabs up top here. This is going to be where we go into our tuning settings to do our actual tuning with. So under basic load settings here, we're going to be finding things such as going into engine and sequential settings. This is going to be programming things such as our actual injector size or our engine displacement so that it can calculate properly our fuel demands for our engine we're doing our tuning. We're going to be going through all this and checking all this out in upcoming videos. We can see under fuel settings, this is going to be the things pertinent to anything related to fuel in our Megasquirt. So our injector dead time, if we have stage injection, any kind of closed loop feedback control using a wideband, we're going to be seeing we have our air fuel table, our main volumetric efficiency table, and then anything else that's associated with this. We also can see here fuel calculation summary. This is going to be popping up a screen that's going to be showing everything that's coming out of our Megasquirt that's going to be calculating our fuel. We can see there's a tremendous amount of data in here. We're going to be going over what this means in an upcoming video. There's going to be different fuel strategies and fit different fuel modes that we can place our Megasquirt in to do different things. So whether we're going to be on a mass airflow or a speed density or we're on individual throttle bodies, we're going to be finding we have different things we can accomplish. Next, we're going to be finding our ignition settings. These are going to be things such as our camera crank pattern, setting up our actual spark timing, if we're doing any kind of knock control, or correction for our coolant temp or air temp or our actual dwell for our coils. We're going to be finding it all here. Our startup and idle, this is going to be related to, give it a second here and let it populate. Our startup and idle is going to be related to anything that's associated with that particular function here for startup and idle. We're going to be finding that we have our cranking fuel, our after start fuel, our warm-up enrichment, and then anything to do with our idle control we're going to be finding in this mode right here. We can see here jumping into our accel enrichment. This is going to be everything related to our acceleration enrichment function. So when we hit the gas, we need to compensate for that and have some fuel added as we're going and giving it throttle so that we don't have a lean spot or a hesitation, or if we're not too lean or too rich, it could be the opposite way. So we're able to correct that using the accel enrichment. We can see under here under boost advance, this is going to be if we have boost control. If we're using a boost solenoid to control our boost, we're going to find that there. We also find that we have launch control, nitrous control, if we have a sequential shift, programming on and outputs on and off, such as relays, control a fan are going to be found there. And then we can see here our 3D maps. These are going to be showing us what our 3D images look like for our VE map for our main fuel volumetric efficiency table, our spark timing table, and our air fuel table. And then lastly here, we can see that we have our CAN bus programming if we're going to be doing anything CAN based. And then finally, we see our upgrade button. Now the upgrade here, if we click this, is going to be able to allow us to upgrade to a registered version of our software or the paid version for the ultra version of the software. And right now, we don't need to do that. We're simply going to go through the basic version of the software that most of you are going to encounter. We don't need to go in and pay for any of the upgrades yet, although it does make your life easier doing your tuning. I'm going to be walking you through all the basic functionalities of the software just using this stripped down version so that we can keep things simple. Then we're going to explore the higher end versions of the software so we can go in and see what the benefits are going to be. We can see if we want to go and upgrade to those, if it's going to be useful for our tuning purposes. So that's going to be it for this video. It's just a general walkthrough of what we can expect. We're going to be taking a look at things further in the next video. and jumping in and learning how to set up our actual engine displacement and our injector type, so that when we go and start doing our tuning process, we're going to be able to begin with the correct data entered, and at the most basic level be able to go in and start our tuning. Okay, so that wraps up Megasquirt training part 3. In the next video, we're going to be taking a look at our sensor calibration. We're going to have a lot to learn, so I'll see you in the next video.